find the beautiful vegetative cover, which of course you saw earlier. And if you take time to listen carefully, if you were here, you probably will hear sounds from birds and other animals. This just reflects how beautiful nature can be, how protective nature can be, how lovely nature can be. But unfortunately, in several places across the world, it's difficult to find this kind of vegetation because some of those forests and bushes, they've been set ablaze for one reason or the other without due consideration for the environmental and health implication of such activities. So today on the program Environment Watch on Independent Television, our focus will be on the impact of bush burning and fire disasters on the environment. As I said before, it has both environmental implications, it also has health implications. Today, for example, there is an incident, an outbreak of Lassa fever. If you have knowledge about Lassa fever, you will know that it's very, very common at this time of the year. All of the reasons behind this, we're going to find out in the course of the program. Welcome on board Environment Watch on Independent Television with Sonny Duke Okosun. Thank you for joining us.
Here is the news on Environment Watch today. On the headlines, federal government to issue $20 billion bond for climate change soon. Now, the World Bank says Nigeria needs $140 billion by 2030 to tackle climate change. A British members of parliament request for nature reports to be released now. And now the details. I am Oguchukwu Bamidele. The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Environment, Bukar Hassan, has said the federal government will soon issue a $20 billion bond to raise funds to tackle the negative effects of climate change. Bukar, who spoke during the ministry's 2017 budget defense with the House of Representatives Committee on Climate Change, said the bond would be issued before the end of March. He said the ministry would execute a total of 31 projects nationwide, with each of the 6 geopolitical zones getting its own fair share of the projects. Earlier, the chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Climate Change, Sam Onwigbo, said the 8.1 billion naira set aside to combat climate change in the budget was inadequate. He said when the amount was juxtaposed with the budgetary allocations of other countries for climate change, Nigeria's investment pales rapidly into insignificance. He said the National Assembly was working on a bill to make the executive create an enabling regulatory framework to facilitate investment in climate change. And away from that, Practical Manager, Africa Environment and Natural Resource at the World Bank, Benoit Bosquet, has said Nigeria needs about $140 billion by 2030 to effectively take action on climate change. Benoit said this while delivering a paper during a climate change knowledge immersion workshop organized by the World Bank in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Environment. According to Benoit, climate change and poverty are intimately related. The poor will be affected the most, in particular women, children and elderly citizens. He also said agricultural production will decrease in many regions of the world because of temperature, desert warming and sea level due to climate change. The National Projects Coordinator of the Nigerian Erosion and Watershed Management Project, NUMAP, Salisu Dahiru, said the federal government has established the intended national contributions of a conditional commitment by 45% and as unconditional commitment to further reduce greenhouse gases emissions by 20% in 2030. Kaduna State Governor also, Nasir El-Rufai, who was represented by the Commissioner for Environment, Shehu Balarabe, said the state has launched a tree planting campaign and has taken steps to reduce carbon footprints. And moving on, a local government area in Bauchi State has introduced measures to curb the menace of tree felling. The caretaker committee chairman of Ganjua local government area, Dr. Al-Qasim Ibrahim, said tree felling is among major impediments in the fight against environmental degradation and deforestation. He said 5 people were recently arrested by vigilantes at Gidanwaya over felling of trees for charcoal production, thereby causing environmental degradation. Dr. Ibrahim said the council has given much attention to curbing the menace in all the communities, adding that the council has strongly warned against indiscriminate felling of trees in the forests. The caretaker committee chairman added that the council has also set up a committee to sensitize and create awareness among the general public on the dangers of cutting down trees, which he said deprived the forests of portions of their canopy that was a major component of environmental protection. According to Dr. Ibrahim, trees are noted for playing a critical role in absorbing the greenhouse gases that fuel global warming. He identified growing urban sprawl, agricultural activities, and logging for commercial purposes as factors for indiscriminate felling of trees for charcoal, wood, and timber. At the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja recorded its first rain last week. The evening rain was recorded in parts of the metropolis, according to reports. Some residents, however, said the rain did not fall in their areas. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, says last week's rain is not the beginning of the 2017 rainfall season for the FCT. The head corporate affairs, NIMET, Mrs. Eva Azingai, said preliminary analysis suggests the rainy season should set in sometime in March. Also speaking, a weather and climate consultant and former NIMET's director of Weather Forecasting Services, Dr. Ifeanyi Nodu, said the rain shower witnessed last week was not unusual. According to Dr. Ifeanyi, at this time of the year, there could be some little disturbance if the moisture and wind from the south is hooked upwards, but it's not usually sustainable. You will just have a little shower, then it will go back. And out of the foreign scene, where British members of Parliament have, in a letter to the Environment Secretary, Andrea Leadsom, criticized the government's long-delayed 25-year plan for improving nature in England, saying the report should be published immediately. They asked her to explain why the strategy due in 2016 is still not out, saying it's essential that ministers have agreed and published a clear plan before negotiations on Brexit begin. The government promised in its manifesto that it would leave nature in a better state than it was inherited. The all-encompassing master plan aims to set out a policy framework for air, freshwater, marine, wildlife, soils, flooding, forests, and even the urban environment. Environmental charities which have been briefed on the plan say it's appropriately ambitious in some respects, but they too want to see it in black and white. The letter of complaints to government was signed by all the members of Environment Audits Committee, which involves Conservatives, Labour and Green members of Parliament. And that's it on the news on Environment Watch today. Many thanks for watching. I am Ugochukwu Bamidele. Environment Watch continues with Sonny Dikukosun. To stay tuned.
Fire is an integral part of man's existence. The dire need for fire cannot be overemphasized because of its uses. However, it is said that whatever has a pro has a con. Fire, with all its uses, could be a terror when it is misused or mismanaged. This is why the breaking news of the outbreaks keeps getting heard over time. Fire, when mismanaged, could result to fire outbreaks. Fire outbreak is the outburst or eruption of fire which sometimes leads to destruction of lives and properties. Fire outbreaks are most times caused by man's activities, also referred to as anthropogenic activities. Statistics show that incendiary fire outbreaks has cost the nation's economy about 6 trillion naira in the last 5 years, with major cities like Lagos, Kano, Port Harcourt, Abuja, Benin City feeling the brunt of fire outbreaks. Fire outbreaks majorly come in two forms, which are domestic fire and bush burning. Thus, the aforementioned forms of fire outbreaks will be the focus of this week's edition of the program Environment Watch. Domestic fire is not a novel issue in everyday man's existence. Domestic fire outbreaks have a wide range of causes, such as using faulty electrical appliances, refueling cooking stoves and generator sets while in use, using of cell phones in petrol station and in the kitchen, as well as smoking before going to bed or while in a petrol station. etc. From the aforementioned causes, it proves the fact that fire outbreaks are a resultant of man's activities.
Coincidentally, we are in a period of the year now where we experience this a lot. Farmers are preparing lands for cultivation for the next farming season, and then persons looking for bush animals go into the forest or bush areas to hunt, and in the process they light fire, and then smoldering whatever filters of cigarettes people dump here and there on heaps of refuse, particularly in marketplaces. So all this portends a lot of environmental and health effect. For example, I want to say that it is a double tragedy, bush burning and fire disaster, because of its effect.
The weather is dry and hot weather. During the period of dry season, and of course dry and hot weather is synonymous with dry season in the tropical region, especially in this part of the world. That's why you have higher incidences or frequencies of bushfire. And so dry weather, high temperature, these are fuel for bushfire. But another factor that also brings about that can also accelerate is actually the wind. The wind also has contributed. You know, if you recall, in December last year, there was this very massive bushfire in the United States of America, California, where hundreds of hectares of land, for days and weeks, they were battling with it. The reason even with the massive infrastructural resources at in the United States of America, they couldn't control it. Why? Because of the wind. The wind was about 120 kilometers per hour. So with such high wind, the fire just keep on spreading. And so that is some of the problems that we also encounter in these parts of the world. But luckily for us in Nigeria, we are not. Nigeria is not a country that has been affected or that is located within the natural disaster zone. So that gives we are a little bit lucky. So most of the incidences of bushfire in this part of the country are actually man-made, made by you and I, uncontrolled fire. So, well, bushfire as human beings, butts of cigarettes, smokers, they just finish and they just throw it. And then before you know it, especially when you are traveling along the road, this could be as a result of primarily the reason for those ones you see when we're traveling are primarily drivers who are driving, and then when they finish, when they are driving, they are smoking. When they are done, they throw the butts away. And then it's dry season, of course, fire can start. With just a little spark, fire starts. And of course, with a favorable wind condition, of course, it will spread. Of course, during the dry season also, we also have the low humidity. Of course, low humidity has to do with the amount of moisture in the atmosphere. And so the low humidity also is an impetus for bushfire to start and to spread also very quickly. Another cause of bushfire, definitely in the farmland. It is during the dry season we have farmers trying to clear their farms, and when after clearing the farms, they will leave it to dry, and after that they set fire to it. And when they do that, sometimes it's actually supposed to be in a controlled condition where they're able to control it. It shouldn't spread beyond certain boundaries. But again, it is the dry season. The weather is hot, sun is up, or the sun is high. What happens? Spreads. The leaves that have accumulated, twigs, parts of wood and everything, they all act as fuel. But let me quickly let you know that fuel is anything that burns. Contrary to what some people, it's not PMS or diesel. Anything that burns is fuel. And so dry leaves, everything, these are our fuel. Even the plastics that we all throw away, any inflammable object that is combustible, flammable, if we are not properly controlled, they all can lead to bushfire. Let me just give you an example. So about a year ago, I had this office cleared. And I asked them to take the papers that were cleared and to drop it outside there and just set fire to it. My brother, you won't believe me. In less than, of course it was in the height of the dry season, in less than 15 minutes, we were battling to control the fire from this office to the library of the University of Benin. I had to quickly call the fire service, and they came over and quickly put out the fire. That spread, it was uncontrollable. That is the same thing that we experienced out there, especially during this period of dry season.
On the other hand, bush burning is an act of setting forest, weeds and grasses on fire. Farmers clear farmland in preparation for the planting season. Fire outbreaks are most especially common in agrarian communities as farmers prepare during the harmattan season, which lasts sometimes from November to March. During this period, the farms and forests are characterized by dryness and wind as well from the atmosphere. So when farmers set to clear bushes through burning, carelessly supervised, could result in a fire outbreak because of the dryness of the woods and leaves and the wind which pushes the fire, as well as the low humidity in the atmosphere.
When you put fire on into the forest, you alter the natural habitat of these animals. What is trending now, we are aware of series of cases of Lassa fever outbreak across Nigeria. The vector for that disease is known as Mastomys natalensis. It's responsible for carrying the Lassa fever virus. And once you light fire, of course they will leave the bush, and it's survival of the fittest or strongest. They will find their way into our houses, and they will urinate on our exposed food. They will excrete on our exposed food. Some may even bite us. Okay, and all this, you know, by the time they do that and we eat this food, of course, Lassa fever for now, we are not aware of any cure, except that it can only be managed. Again, putting fire in our forest, you are destroying valuable vegetations. We are in an era where we are talking of reforestation, afforestation, and then we are destroying, we are cutting down. We are even in an era where we are talking of the trees we are logging in the various forests. We are not even able to make a replacement commensurate to the rate at which we are falling down those trees, and we are destroying other valuable vegetations. One of such effects is that most valuable plants and animals are become endangered, and they are gradually going into extinction. At my age, there are certain animals you talk about now I've never seen. I just read about them in books. The same thing with plants. Okay, and then what are the cumulative effects of all this? At the end of the day, the end product of combustion contributes immensely, I want to say it again, over and over and again, immensely to the chlorofluorocarbon, CFC gases, that further depletes the ozone layer. And once that happens, of course, we are going to start experiencing direct ultraviolet radiation of sunlight. And again, with all the attendant consequences, environmentally, agriculturally, and all that. Again, bush burning can further impoverish the soil, and then that again becomes a challenge for food security, because it reduces the moisture content of the soil, and the moisture content is supposed to support plant growth. Again, visibility is impaired. When this happens, most times you see on our express road, visibility is impaired, and the dangers are that motorists, commuters we are likely to record more cases of avoidable accidents. So it is a very serious challenge that must be checked. And these things keep on year in, year out. We keep talking about it. Nothing seems to be happening, particularly in our rural areas. And it is a challenge that must be curbed and must be checked.
Scientists have all over the world have agreed that actually there's a serious change in climate. When there's bushfire, what happens? Smokes, ash, carbon dioxide, which has been implicated seriously in global warming, one of the major greenhouse gases, is released into the atmosphere. And of course, what happened, that also, exacerbates the whole problem of global warming. Now, the correlation, whether it's bush burning, house incidences in the house, whatever, is that when there is fire, it releases what? Pollutants into the atmosphere. It releases pollutants into the atmosphere. That's it. And what are these pollutants? Smoke, ash, carbon dioxide. And these are the substances that have been implicated in global warming. So once you have increase in the frequencies of fire, be it domestic, be it uncontrolled bushfire, like wildfire and all, it will almost definitely increase the global warming that we are currently experiencing in the world.
Arising from the mentioned causes of fire outbreaks, the results are horrible. Fire outbreaks result to loss of lives and property, impact on human health, as well as the degradation of the environment. The smoke emitted from fire could be very detrimental to human health and the environment. Smoke is a complex mixture of many chemicals, including carbon monoxide, water vapor, particles of hydrocarbons, nitrogen oxides, oxides of sulfur, and thousands of many other compounds which are largely dependent on what's being burnt. The resultant effect of smoke does not do much harm to people who inhale it, but it could be of danger to specific people, such as people with respiratory diseases, cardiovascular diseases, infants, pregnant women, fetus, as well as the elderly. To the environment, the impact of fire outbreak could be a great deal. Fire results to air pollution, land pollution, even soil pollution. It affects wildlife, especially that from bush burning. It also degrades the beauty of the environment. The smoke emitted from fire has poisonous chemical compounds or gases which result in the alarming climate change. Fire outbreaks leaves the land desolate as the soil is affected. Bush burning, whether wild or controlled, affects the quality of the soil. The soil after a fire outbreak loses its nutrients as there is a reduced level of nitrogen as well as an increased level of acidity in the soil. The soil also loses its ability to absorb and retain water. And of course, the soil is faced with high temperatures as a resultant effect of low water and low availability of trees to provide shade for the soil. When the soil's moisture and humidity is low, erosion is inevitable. As the soil becomes unstable and repels water, it makes it possible for erosion to occur. Arising from the numerous effects of fire outbreaks, experts have preferred ways to curtail fire outbreaks. First of all, it's important to have awareness concerning fire outbreaks and how they should be handled. So experts have advocated for awareness creation. Children should not be left to handle cooking and electrical appliances. Electrical sockets should not be overloaded. There should be a standby fire extinguisher in cars, homes, and malls, etc. Fire outlets and smoke detectors should be installed in homes and industries as well as commercial centers, and they should be maintained regularly. Avoid using flammable liquids to get rid of pests and insects on household equipment. Bush burning activities as well as refuse burning should be well supervised and controlled. Fire outbreaks can be avoided. The best way to prevent fire outbreak is to be cautious.
Yeah, I could literally feel the smell from this leaf, from the leaf of this plant, and just something that again projects what we're talking about on the program this week, Environment Watch, on the need for us to protect the environment, preserve our forest in such a way and manner that they can continue to provide for us, make life more meaningful, life worth living, because with environment we can't survive, we can't live a normal life. That's where the food is grown, the water that we drink comes from. So this is the focus of the program this week, and we hope that you enjoyed it while it lasted. Ensure that you protect the environment, avoid bush burning, indiscriminate bush burning. You heard the analysis from some of those we interviewed that Lassa fever which of course is a viral disease being disseminated or projected by a particular species of rat. Now, because of these bush burning activities, these rats, they're leaving the bushes and they're coming into our homes with far-reaching health implications. And then, of course, when we burn, like is always the case, a lot of gases go into the atmosphere. They also have far-reaching environmental implications. Today, we're talking about global warming, climate change as a result of greenhouse gases that goes into the atmosphere. All of these activities and actions have far-reaching implications. Protect. My name is Sonny Duke Okosun. Thanking you for staying with us on Environment Watch. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.